everyone, and welcome back to another round of Tuesday Night Legacy. This is from last week. This is actually our streamed video. This is Mono Red Burn versus 4-color Loam pile. Let's get started. On the left, we have Keith playing this mono red list. Now, this is a classic and reliable deck in Legacy, Burn being a very reliable deck in pretty much any format that it's in. Concept is, you pay 1 mana, you deal 3 damage. So if you can do that 7 times, then you win the game, because that's 21 damage. There are exceptions, obviously. You are playing some creatures that are quick, repeatable damage. And, of course, there are a couple cards that kind of get you over the finish line. Fire Blast probably being the biggest one of them, being able to sacrifice 2 of your mountains in order to deal 4 damage for the finishing blow. And in this format specifically, Price of Progress does a lot of work. And Price of Progress is going to punish the hell out of any player who is running non-basics, which is pretty much everybody else in Legacy. Burn is usually very likely to win by turns 3 or 4. After that, things get really dicey because you're probably out of gas in your hand and you're just playing off the top of your deck. If your opponent is able to answer that first burst of damage, then your chances of winning really statistically drop from there, but it's not impossible. You can always rip a Price of Progress. On the right, we have Ben playing a 4-color Dack Loam pile. Favorite planeswalker of many a player, Dack Faden being able to draw cards and discard cards and take control of artifacts, really punishing the hell out of those D&T players. It also runs a couple Hull Breachers, so if you're able to get Dack Faden in play, you can actually plus on your opponent and say, I get 2 treasures, you don't draw anything, and then I'd like you to discard 2 cards. So it gets really oppressive in the late game, obviously, with these 2 cards on field. But a Loam deck, it's more of a Maverick deck masquerading as a Loam pile. You have your Knight of the Reliquary, so you're trying to get all of these lands in the graveyard. As you can see, we almost have 26 unique lands here. There's a playset of Windswept Heath and 3 Wastelands, but beyond that, there's also 2 Grove of the Burn Willows. Other than that, every single land is a 1-of in the deck. You only have 1 forest, and I think that's it for basics. So as we were talking about earlier, Price of Progress could really hurt this deck. There's only 1 Green Sun Zenith, but it's just a pile of trying to find different things to answer your opponent. Obviously, this one runs 4 Chalice of the Void, and it also runs 4 Mox Diamond to kind of help offset that extremely greedy mana base. You do have 2 Life from the Loam, the namesake card of the deck, to be able to get back those cards that you're either sacrificing with the Knight of the Reliquary or discarding to the Mox Diamond. And other than that, this is a grind fest of a deck that loves to live pretty much in turns 4 through 10. And, the longer that you can grind out the game, the better this deck likes to be. So getting extra advantage out of Fairy Mastermind, or maybe forcing your opponent to discard because of the Hull Breacher, or get those treasures with the Fairy Mastermind, and then, slap down a Minsc and Boo and just end the game in a couple turns. All right, with those out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the games, shall we? Looks like Ben is deciding to put 2 back. He's the one on the right with the Journey Sleeves. And going to start out with that Windswept Heath into the Green Sun Zenith, finding that Dryad Arbor, since that is a 0 converted mana cost creature. And going to use that Taiga. Looks like he put back a Life from the Loam and that Dryad Arbor, knowing that he was about to go and find it. We have Keith finding a Rift Bolt, suspending that for 1 mana. He's going to get that for free next turn. So he did get rid of one of those Life from the Loams because he had a Life from the Loam, deploying the Karakas and getting back the Windswept Heath. Keith, sensing that Eidolon of the Great Revel going to do a whole lot of work here, fires off that Rift Bolt, bringing Ben down to 16. Now there's 15 with that fetch of the Windswept Heath. And the Eidolon of the Great Revel, hoping to do a lot of work this game. Ben trying to decide what his best course of action here, grabbing the Tropical Island. Tropical Island, of course, 1-of. And we are actually seeing one of the removal spells, the Prismatic Ending, being able to get rid of pretty much any permanent in play as long as its CMC is the Converge or less. So what Ben actually ended up doing here is creating 4 different mana types so that was a CMC 4 spell to get rid of the Eidolon of the Great Revel. dodging that 2 damage that would be dealt from Eidolon, since it's CMC 3 or less. Does that keep happening? There we go. Another Eidolon being deployed here, and Ben says, well, fine, I'm just going to deploy my threat. Here's the Knight of the Reliquary. A Rift Bolt suspended, so when that comes out of suspend, it is CMC 3, so Keith will take damage for his own Rift Bolt, but that's just the price you got to pay sometimes, especially if your opponent has this big threat on board, the Knight of the Reliquary already being, I believe, at least a 5/5. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 lands in the yard. Knight of the Reliquary being a 3 or a 2/2. Now the fun part here that was just done is he declared attacks with Knight of the Reliquary, dealt that damage, and then used his Maze of Ith to take it out of combat at the end of combat. Untap target attacking creature. It is legally an attacking creature until the end of combat phase. Even though that prevent all combat damage, it doesn't matter. It is just untapped because the damage has already been done, so it's like pseudo-vigilance. We see Keith rip that Price of Progress off the top, dealing 10 damage to Ben because of that Dryad Arbor, also counting as a creature and a land, a non-basic land. So Price of Progress, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's the game. We are into game 2 here in round 1. Seeing a Mox Diamond being cast. This was turn 2, I believe, for Ben. Turn 1 for Keith. So he turned that sideways. Oh, no, that was turn 1. He just had that mana open and was able to use the Punishing Fire to kill the Goblin Guide, and actually profiting with a land off the top from the Goblin Guide trigger. Revealing a land, you get to put it in their hand. Sometimes Goblin Guide can be really good at providing information off the top of your opponent's deck, as long as they don't hit a land. And, oh, so like I said, I had pulled this off the stream. It's, I guess I missed one of these sections here, talking about the commentators flipping back and forth, but here is the game state once again. See, another Reliquary dropped into play from Ben, and a Roiling Vortex from Keith. So this is going to deal 1 damage each turn. Keith can pay 1 damage or 1 red at any time to stop life gain from happening. But this is also going to punish players that try and cast things that don't have any mana attached to them. So say you have like an Omniscience. Omniscience that you can cast all your spells for free, but you're not casting them with mana, so you would be taking 5 damage for each spell you try to cast with Omniscience. A very good Omnitel sideboard card. I think Keith is using it here for the life gain denial and the 1 damage each turn. We see Ben activating the Knight of Reliquary, sacrificing that forest, I believe. Yep. And then gets to get any land and put it onto the battlefield. We're going to go with a Windswept Heath. This is basically growing the Knight of the Reliquary, so for each land that enters the graveyard, it gets +1/+1. So you go and fetch a base or a fetch land, and then you get to fetch for another land. It's two lands of the yard instead of 1. Pretty good deal. Now it's a 6/6. So I think Ben should maybe take 1 more damage here. I'm not entirely certain, but we're going to crack for 9 here. There's no creatures in the yard, so a Lightning Bolt could kill this Scavenging Ooze at the moment. But there is no untapped land, so that's no good. So basically just putting that Monastery Swiftspear in front of the 6/6. Keith looks like he's in a bit of trouble here, dropping his Pain Land into play. Well, it's not a Pain Land, but the Horizon Canopy style land. What's it called? The Sunbaked Canyon. Used it to go and find another land, or to just straight up draw another card. But even with all of this burn in his hand, he's got 6 damage. Chain Lightning, Lava Spike, taking 4 damage to do that. Just drops Ben down to 9, but there's just too much damage being represented on the other side of the board. I think he can live for 1 turn with chump blocks here. But there's a Prismatic Ending. Even taking 2 for that and going down to 7, this is a huge crack. And we're off to game 3. A Goblin Guide turn 1 for Keith off of a Sunbaked Canyon is going to deal 2 damage. It's going to reveal a Prismatic Ending, which is probably going to be deployed right now. Get rid of that. Yep. So that should be an exile. I'm not sure if that's Keith's exile pile. We'll see if it matters. We see a mountain into Monastery Swiftspear. Turn that sideways. Down to 16. Ben deploying... Ooh, there you go. The 4 of Chalice of the Void in the deck. We finally see it in game 3. So this is going to turn Keith off of all these 1-mana spells. But it looks like that doesn't actually affect him at all with his current hand. There's an Eidolon, a Rift Bolt, a Roiling Vortex, and Price of Progress. So I think we probably drop the Eidolon into play here. Decides on the Roiling Vortex. This is going to be a little bit of a bummer because the Roiling Vortex is going to deal him 5 damage off of that Rift Bolt since he's going to cast it without any mana. 2 damage from the Monastery Swiftspear, getting a Prowess trigger off of the Roiling Vortex. Decided to cast Life from the Loam last turn, pulling some lands out of the grave back to hand for Ben. So we miss this Roiling Vortex trigger here. And I think he forgot to take the damage for it. Not entirely certain. But we are seeing that Swiftspear turn sideways for 1 more damage. Ben down to 9. This is actually me correcting the game state and bringing Keith down to the appropriate level. The commentators also mentioned that he should be at 11, but, you know, not the biggest deal. So we see Ben take his next turn here. We've got the basic forest in play and 2 other lands, so that price is currently dealing 4 damage. There's a Dryad Arbor. Keith is really happy to see that. And I think we're talking about that 1 more damage. Ben says this is the life total he should be at, and we continue on with the game. So 2 prices. This is game here, as long as Keith fires it off. That's going to be 6 damage. Decides to go for attacks first. We see a Flashed In Endurance, taking 2 damage, going down to 6. And then a price is going to wrap it up. And that is that. Keith takes it 2-1. Thanks again for stopping by. I hope that you enjoyed the video here. If you haven't already and you're still here, why don't you consider liking and subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date on all our cool stuff. We're streaming twice a month now, so if you're seeing this video, it's probably the week between our streams. We streamed last week, and we're going to stream next week as well. So join us on those weeks for live action, and we'll try and get as many videos up in between those streams as possible. Just like the video you're watching now. Thanks as always to Spellhold Games and Collector Legion for allowing us to record in their play space. We literally wouldn't exist without you. And if you like these deck lists and you want to see them a little bit closer, maybe at your leisure, they're going to be up on our Instagram channel over at Tuesday Night Legacy on Instagram. I try to get those up as soon as these videos go up. If not, just wait a little bit, they'll be up. And I think that's going to do it for us for this one. As always, my name is Eugene, and this is Tuesday Night Legacy. We'll see you next time.